good morning to you wherever you are. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain, so.
Indeed, it's Humps-day. I remember the first time I heard that word.
Oh.
Humps-day. Well, it is Humps-day. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Well, for some reason, it's always tricky saying it's Hump Day, but welcome to Lagos. Well, yeah, it's Wednesday here in the nation's commercial capital. I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Well, let's start off with this matter brewing in the Inter-Party Advisory Council. It's a coalition of the political parties in Nigeria. And no, we've always talked about how internal democracy is important, how things need to go the right way in the parties, because that's a microcosm of government in Nigeria. So watch this, and we'll come back to break down the issues.
A heated confrontation marked the conclusion of the Inter-Party Advisory Council's end-of-tenure meeting due to allegation by some members of an unlawful extension of the executive's tenure under the leadership of Mr. Yabagi Sani. When tempers calmed, the national chairman of IPAC denies claims of tenure elongation as he explains that the election date was only shifted by a few days and he remains in charge as the interim chairman.
After the expiration of the council tenure of 2 years, which ended today midnight, the council in its wisdom appointed the General Assembly in its wisdom appointed the council to run the affairs of the Inter-Party Advisory Council between tomorrow, that is when the tenure of this council expires, until the election is conducted on the 18th of this month.
Some aggrieved members state their position on the issue of tenure elongation.
We just need to correct some certain abnormalities that is going on in this country. And now, as the umbrella body of all political parties in Nigeria, which is IPAC, we feel that sanity should begin from here.
You want to extend my tenure, and I don't want to be part of that extension. I want the right thing to be done. Let's have election. We have dragged this election timetable 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
The chairman of the IPAC Electoral Committee gives reasons why the date for the election was moved to the 18th of December 2023.
There are just 2 positions that will not be part of that election. The position of the Assistant National Secretary and that of the Publicity Secretary, because they came under off-season election. They passed through the process, they were elected, and they have not done 2 years. IPAC, in its wisdom, extended their tenure to terminate with the ones that will be elected now, so that we don't have such aberration.
Despite the imminent election of a new executive in just a few days, disgruntled members assert that scheduling the election on December 18, 2023, 5 days after the expiration of the current executive's tenure, constitutes a blatant violation of the Inter-Party Advisory Council's Code of Conduct.
There you have it. Just when you thought these issues would have been left behind so we can focus on governance and ensuring our political parties are at the very best, because that's what would eventually translate into governance. So the chairman of IPAC saying, well, there's been an agreement, right, to elongate his term. But you could see the national secretary and even the chairman of some other parties within the IPAC saying, well, aren't we a member of the executives as well? Aren't we meant to be a part of this decision? So clearly something is not right within IPAC. And as I said earlier on, it is a sad tale, because if this is happening within the political party, just a little political party in some sense, just imagine what then will be happening within government. If this is not a wake-up call, at least maybe the 1,000th wake-up call for the political parties, I wonder what is. Guys?
I mean, look, I just think we all need to calm down. Calm down, take a chill pill. What precisely is at stake here? It's supposed to be a coming together of political parties. That's essentially what IPAC is about. what was that? What was the meaning of
Advisory Council?
Inter-Party Advisory Council. They are meant to advise, I think, parties. They advise themselves as political parties. They advise INEC. They're like a union of sorts of the political parties. They have collaborations with political parties from other countries. So, I mean, there's a lot that IPAC does, and you'd be surprised just what is possible and the amount of resources that go into making IPAC what it is, and how all the political parties, derive some strength, and I don't want to say relevance, from that tree called IPAC. But I'm looking at what is happening now. It looks like it's something that's very easy. From what I heard, one of the respondents who was interviewed say, he said some of the positions are not yet due for election. So what they've decided to do is extend the tenure of others that are due for election to the time when all the other positions are not, are about to be due for elections, and do all of the elections at once so that we don't have a continuous aberration. Wasn't it just a few weeks ago we heard former President Goodluck Jonathan saying that this issue of off-cycle polls that we have, we should find a way to see how we can regularize the polls to make sure that it coincides, with all the other elections that we normally have. That's Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo that we did. That there was just something a bit off about how the elections are conducted. So maybe that's what IPAC is trying to avoid. Or maybe there was something a little more sinister, because we're also hearing allegations of how these elections have been moved several times and they have not been conducted. So I think that there also have been a little more sincerity, and this kind of thing should not be something that is a thing that is imposed on members. I want to imagine that if there's any way democracy should be easily practiced, it should be among political parties. That sort of matter should have been something that will be tabled before all the members, and then they can either say yay or nay to the matter. If nay is the answer, then they could conduct the elections of those that are due and leave those that are not due. If they say yay, okay, then it means that maybe they are enjoying the governance of those who are currently at the helm of affairs, and they extend it to the time when the others are due. Why do they have to quarrel and fight over this? It's really not very, very nice. Unless, of course, they doubt the intention of those who have brought this up and how they've gone about it. But Chamberlain, am I making this sound too simple? I mean, because it looks pretty straightforward to me, unless, of course...
That's the story of this country. The problem is pretty simple.
Things that, should be easy peasy, shouldn't it?
That's a small honey in some people's mouth. They don't want to let go. Just small power. And they're turning the table around, upside down.
Dear. What are you insinuating? As the people are licking sugar.
What is it, this IPAC that they don't want to hold the elections? Oh, boy. And here we are. These same political parties are the ones who are advising what INEC in terms of what to do and make sure things are done right and make sure you follow the rules and follow to the letter. And look at this. I mean, all they are asking is, look, the tenure is over. I said yesterday at midnight. So they knew it was going to be over at that time. So part of what some of those are asking, including national secretaries, look, why are we shifting this? What is the big deal? And Mr. Sani, they say, look, you don't have to preside as the interim chairman and you want to contest again. So what do you expect? You definitely will tilt some things to your advantage when you're occupying that position. Stay aside and let some of these things go on. Okay. Yes, there's a council, electoral committee headed by chairman of Zenith Labour Party. And so, yes, they're supposed to do all of those. But they're still fine. Some tenures, they came in off-cycle elections. Granted, that can be on the one side. But do the right things. I mean, it's amazing how... You just think that, oh, yeah, these are the same people who will come and then hypothesize, and theorize and give you good lectures on how elections should hold. But look at this. So it's really unfortunate. How many elections have those parties even won? The people who are heading those things. But it's amazing.
Big question.
Do they fund this? I think I need to go back and double check. What kind of funding? Did they say fund these political parties? What is in this IPAC that they want to let go this much?
So political parties no longer receive funding from
But they must be receiving something to want to hang on to those positions.
Perhaps IPAC as a union might be getting something from there.
Look, IPAC, just put your house in order. There's no big, put your house in order. It's a simple thing. And how are people supposed to take them seriously now with this? Oh, boy.
How will people know about IPAC if we don't fight and quarrel?
Let's take you through some of the daily. Sometimes, look, this is Christmas season. I'm not going to let some of these things spoil it, no matter how hard it appears. So, yes, indeed, we'll have to see what we can do about all of those. But look at New Telegraph this morning. Well, this is serious. Powerful Nigerians involved in illegal mining, funding banditry, and terrorism, ascribed to Alaki. This suggests they know them, doesn't it? I mean, for you to have identified them as powerful, it means you know them. Well, that's the way it comes across. It says, government identifying them through kinetic, non-kinetic means, okay? Most of the foreigners not properly documented by immigration. So, this was what he was, I think, defending his budget with the National Assembly. This came through. So, it's there for you to see. I know they're doing something about those licenses, mining licenses, and trying to see that things go right. They want to set up a gold refinery in Nasarawa State or thereabout, just to make sure things go right. But how do they deal, after identifying them, what next? Because they say they are powerful Nigerians. Are they the ones that seem to be above the law? Politicians blame INEC for poll losses. Professor Yakubu urges newly sworn-in Rex not to be impervious to genuine criticisms. Okay. Look, this comments, well, maybe I'll just let people read the story, because if it says politicians blame INEC for poll losses, are there no cases where INEC themselves have been responsible for poll losses? Are there no cases? Are they painting, does this comment looks as if it's painting everything in one brush, says, no, we are the umpire. Well, yeah, you're supposed to be the umpire, but there are several other instances where people have raised huge questions. Hashtag Cookie. We had the SDP candidates here who pointedly said this was not it. But I guess they'll go ahead and sort all of that. And don't forget, perception is a lot of people's reality. But in this case, what's going on with that official of the commission that was said to have been the ones caught with pre-filled ballot boxes and election materials? So, I wonder what they'll say about that one. Okay, aviation, FG shops for extra 81 billion naira for Abuja second runway. Can anything be done about airline ticket costs? I think something can.
I mean, the story is on runway. Where did ticket costs come
My own
there?
story is on tickets. Is it not where it pinches you that you speak about? He who wears the shoe knows where they say.
The story is on runway.
Yeah, they can keep shopping. But for that runway, there have to be passengers for that runway to run on the runway. So
you didn't experience when we're going to Kaduna to go and take planes. That's why you're not taking that runway story seriously. It was just not too long. I think it was in 2017 2017. When the Abuja airport was shut down. And people had to go to Kaduna to be able... Right now, well, I imagine that if such an operation has to happen again, there will be double reassurance of security along the Kaduna Abuja road and also even on the rail, because those were the options that were available. You first of all go to the airport, enter a bus, and then it takes you to Kaduna before you can board your flight. Same thing for when you're coming back. And they'll take you straight to the airport. So when you're coming in from Kaduna, you will think, we'll stop in the city center. No, darling. We go straight to the airport in Abuja, and then from the Abuja airport, you can find your way back into the city. So trust me, if they're shopping for 81 billion naira, how much they say they're looking for?
81 billion naira.
That's a lot of money.
Just second runway.
I thought the runway. It looks very much like roads.
81 billion.
Is it longer than, or is it thicker than a normal road? Precisely why are airport runways that expensive?
But look at this. It says sector to gulp 63 billion from budget, but they're looking for 81 billion for the runway.
So even just one runway is not. We'll take all of the money for the budget.
Wow. Look at this. Speaking about budget, guys, I think you might be interested in this one. Senate berates minister, I think this Minister of Trade, over proposed 1 billion naira Geneva trip in 2024 budget. Yeah, you heard. 1 billion naira.
How is she flying? Is she flying first class, or is she flying private jets? What exactly is she flying?
A question.
Or is it that we are so out of touch with the reality of how much it costs to fly?
Looks like we are with this budget matter, because the kind of things you see, and you can't just deal. And so there are many questions about this our budgeting system in this country.
Let me use the expression that is coming to my mouth.
Wow.
Right now, but as Yoruba people will say, "Ogao." Anyways, Vanguard newspapers is the one I'm looking at for you. And they're also looking at the budget as well. Look at that. 2024, budget under threat as oil price drops to $76.53 per barrel. So this one is talking about the price of crude oil now. The price of crude oil seems to be dipping. We've enjoyed a pretty good run, but the question is whether we've really benefited, whether we've been able to harness the benefits that should have come from the price of, high crude oil prices. The thing for me right now is, as this comes down, we should also see a reflection in the pump price of petrol. Okay, so while this might not be good for the country in general in terms of our revenue, and we're talking about how we need to diversify, maybe that would not be put on the front burner. This might have a direct, or this should have a direct impact on the price of the products that come from crude oil. So we should see a dipping at the filling stations in the price of petrol. So
ideally.
Well, yes, ideally. Page 5 is where you'll see details, but this is putting the entire budget under threat, because don't forget that the budget is mainly predicated on the price of crude oil and how much we're able to produce out of it. So look at that. And then output is also falling. So the rider then also tells you just what's happening. Oil output falls 7.4% to 1.25 million barrels per day. That's according to the NUPRC.
Not forgetting, we don't know exactly how much we produce. I thought that's what they said.
Yeah, but at least we're able to, the oil companies are able to see how much they are bringing out from the ground. Now, whether that is as much as makes it to the tankers, I don't know. But this is what is currently happening. Oil output is falling. And everything looks like it's shaky. Well, I think to be forewarned, this is still December. We still have time to be able to get our acts together before January. Oil theft still affecting outputs, that's according to NNPC. Minister of State, Oil, remains positive. Experts make case for more investment, diversification. Stories on page 5 of the paper. You also see right there the picture telling you a story around the health sector renewable investment initiatives, which we will be focusing on in a little bit. So do stay with us. But you can see right there the president and the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum signing on behalf of the governors who were present there yesterday. Look at this story. Fresh outbreak of COVID-19 hits Benue. A story is right there on the page 22. Have we been able to confirm as the, what's the name of our disease control now? Looking for the acronym.
Center for Disease Control?
Yes. NCDC, thank you. The NCDC.
Sorry, I was confusing. It sounded like NSC.
Yeah, but yeah, Center for Disease Control, Chimley, right, but there's an N in front of it. So the NCDC, have they confirmed this? Is this something that we need to be concerned about? Has it been contained? How were they able to confirm this? You might want to read details on page 22. Okay, and then we also see, of course, oh, look at this. This might cheer you up, Chamberlain. Airlines to compensate passengers for delay, cancelled flights in 2024. Why 2024? Why not 2023?
Forget about the last one that's happened. That's what they're trying to tell you here.
No. See? Aviation Minister.
Why not with immediate effect?
It has to be with immediate effect.
I thought that's what the law says.
Page 33, though, is where you find details. I was hoping it will come for Chamberlain, but he has more questions.
What's the basis of this price increase? Do we have a template? What should we expect? Because you just go there, you don't even know, you just hear it's up. Sorry. They say, oh no. What they call that? Aviation fuel. And then the prices, you just can't predict these days. You can't plan properly.
You can't plan properly. That's very true. That's very true. And sometimes flights just get cancelled without notice and alternatives are not provided. BPE to take LMF petrochemicals to market in 2024. So for those looking for investment opportunities, that's right there as well. And Mr. and Mrs., I mean, what this economy will cost. It's making Mr. and Mrs. quarrel. I sincerely hope that Mr. and Mrs., they're able to reconcile. I hope it's not a situation in your homes. I hope Mr. understands and Mrs. is also understanding. I mean, take a look at what Mr. is saying here. He says, I've noticed that for some time now, if I give you 150,000 naira housekeeping allowance, foodstuffs don't last beyond the middle of the month. As they say, every day is for the thief, one day is for the owner. And Mrs. says, who is the thief and who is the owner? Because one of them will have to prepare his food henceforth. I remember there's a story about how some men will say, you know what, this money is not lasting. I want to start going to the market. And the women will say, hallelujah. Please, by all means, here's the basket. Start going to the market. And then just after maybe a month or two, the men will say, maybe, babe, you don't need to quarrel like this. It's not everything you will take hard line.
It's just a joke now.
Well,
coming down.
He who feels it knows it. If you haven't gone, you don't understand what's going on. But let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers. And Bukola, yes, welcome to the program. I hope the economy is not making you quarrel with anyone this morning.
Not at all. What would have made me quarrel would have been the roads, It's a day when you wish that there was less drama, but, you just have to accept things as they come. You guys seem to be in your elements this morning. I couldn't help but, keep chuckling over your conversation. Chamberlain, you might have to define honey, in that IPAC commentary. Is it made in Abuja honey or made in Lagos honey? Just asking this morning. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the Guardian newspaper this morning. It's something that affects every one of us. In season and out of season. Listen to this. Counterfeit drugs. NAFDAC is at the top. Counterfeit drugs market booms amid staff shortage, poor funding. Now, this is in spite of the sustained efforts of the regulatory agency NAFDAC to rein in on the, surfeit of fake drugs in the market, both with registered manufacturers or importers, as the case may be, and those who sell in the open market. But look at the infographics provided by The Guardian this morning. It provides further details. Inferior drugs kill 500,000 persons in Nigeria, SSA countries yearly, 500,000. So, when you go to purchase these drugs, you cannot be too careful, particularly in these climes where we do across-the-counter purchase of drugs instead of buying strictly, within the medical institutions as obtains in other countries. There's more. 267,000 deaths due to fake anti-malarial medicines, 169,271 killed by substandard antibiotics. It can only get, I hope it doesn't get worse. There's more. Only 2,000 NAFDAC staff saddled with 58,020 registered products post-market surveillance. Only 2,000 staff over 58,020 concerns. Now, the budget is on my mind. How much has the administration committed to the 2024 budget that could, shore up the agency's ability to employ more staff for surveillance? And I imagine, other departments within the ministry, particularly where monitoring of food and beverages are concerned. 97.1% of 7.648 billion naira budget goes to salaries. Well, it came right ahead of me. 2.9% left for capital expenses. Well, that's it for the big story, but a lot to chew on this morning. And there's another health concern right under the big story on the front page of The Guardian, and it's coming from the southwest of the country. 18 Osun pupils land in hospitals after eating poisoned oatmeal, and I guess that means oatmeal. Now, what brand is this? Who purchased it? And in which school has this happened? Well, we hope that, those pupils are not in serious danger and that they'll be out soon. But the more important point here is caution. How careful can we be amid, the abundance of counterfeit food and pharmaceutical products in the market? There's more to take a look at this morning on the front page of The Guardian. Let's touch on politics very quickly now. Akeredolu transmits power to Ayedatiwa, begins medical leave. That came in yesterday, and it's a page 7 read. Now, does this sufficiently shut the door on the conversation about the political crisis, or impasse, if you like, in Ondo State? We hope that it does. But then again, when you consider, the allegations of forgery of the governor's, signature, well, then if some people are held culpable, then they must be prosecuted because of, it's a crime under the law. There's so much more, to touch on the front page of The Guardian, but I'll leave you to do that yourself. Let's leave it there for The Guardian newspaper this morning.
Well, major questions you've raised, Bukola, but take a look at the Nigerian Observer this morning. This is how the paper couches big story. BPE recommits to optimizing FG's assets through private sector investment. So BP, of course, is Bureau of Public Enterprise, and you understand how big the FG's asset is when it comes to funding the budget and the rest. So that's how the Nigerian Observer leads this morning. And you see there, just on top of a nameplate, Edo in advanced push to boost knowledge transfer of Chinese technology. I know these talks have been on both at the federal and state level, but we see that Edo State seems to be pushing further. State's Poly partners China's Jiangxi Poly, Yongxin Steel Company, to train technicians. So that's how the Nigerian Observer captures the story this morning. Of course, the story from Ondo State also makes its way to the front page. But let's leave it there for the Nigerian Observer. Shibboleth.
Nigeria is next here. Pay us 33 billion naira. Yeah, that is a big lead on the front page of this Nigeria here today. And look at this. Families of 53 victims of Kaduna airstrikes drag FG army to court, demand compensation over killing of loved ones. So, does that then mean that all the other cases, similar cases, the Iran, the one in Nasarawa, every other time that this has happened in recent history, they also come forward and sue? Well, oh boy.
Well, they certainly have a case. They certainly have a case against the Nigerian state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they do.
Well, Keyamo to NAS. Airlines will compensate passengers over flight delays, cancellations as from 2024. Maybe they should also add there, no arbitrary increase in price of tickets, please. That is this Nigeria this month.
Okay, well,
that's from 2024 too, maybe.
Yeah, and so maybe they should add, but at this rate, I see us upholding a placard very soon.
Might too. Never can tell.
Well, Business Day is the one I have for you, and look at it. Multinationals exit to dent Nigeria's $1 trillion GDP target. So yes, the fact that all of these multinationals are upping and leaving the country, it certainly could have an impact on overall GDP and what we're looking to, where we're looking to get to at the end of the day. 1 trillion naira is the goal, but when you have GlaxoSmithKline leaving, you have Procter & Gamble leaving, who else again is packing their things? I think
companies that boost the health sector.
They do. And look at that, multinational payments double federal government's corporate tax haul on weaker naira. So that's one of the reasons why we should not let them leave, because when they pay their taxes and they do so in dollars, it will have an effect on our forex base. It will also have an effect on the value of the naira.
Yeah.
So we need to do everything we can. But look at this. It might not be news to you. Bank stocks shine in 2023. Whenever are they dull? Well, hey, well, yes, they did crash some time ago. The stocks, not the profits of the banks. And let's not mix the two, as I was doing in my head, because the moment you say banks, oftentimes what comes to your mind are the profits they make, and their profits are always shining. But looks like the stock is also improving on the stock market, and some confidence has returned to our Nigerian Stock Exchange. So for those looking to do some investment, that might be a very good place to be looking at this time. And they haven't done so badly in 2023. We'll leave it there for Business Day.
And switch to Daily Independent. There are some stories that we can share about, but only when what is promised has been confirmed this morning. But take a look, first of all, at the big story on the front page of Daily Independent. To boost electricity supply, FG plans to restructure transmission. Admits power privatization exercise is disappointing. Now, this admittance is coming how many years down the line after implementation, and a lot of consequences have been incurred, both on the part of the service providers and especially on the part of Nigerians who are at the receiving end. Now, what form would this unbundling of the transmission aspect of power supply take? Perhaps we would need to have that conversation in the coming days. But, it's a story to chew on this morning. Let's go above the nameplate now to see what perhaps Nigerians can share about, particularly from the aviation sector. Listen to this one. Airlines to start paying compensation on delayed, cancelled flights from January. That's ascribed to the Minister of Aviation. Now, cancelled flights from as far back as when, or, going forward. And what form would the compensation take?
Yeah. That's a valid question. So are we going to backdate it? Because some of us have a few, we could just compile the list and say, well, get our compensation. So big questions, but this is not the first time.
This is not the first time.
We've heard this. So yes, we chair what should be done, and ensure that this is not just talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, right beside that one, court confirms Fubara's loyalist Ehie as Rivers Assembly Speaker. That certainly is not the end of the conversation. Perhaps we're going to be getting another court order, instructing differently in the coming days. That's the way politics goes in Nigeria. But let's leave it there for Daily Independent newspaper.
And that's it with a look at some of the dailies this morning. We're back in just a moment with a big issue concerns you, your health, the nation's health. How do we make it better? That's in a moment. Stay with us.
the nation unveils Nigeria's Health Sector Renewal Compact and Investment Initiative. It's also the event to mark the World Universal Health Coverage Day.
We cannot afford to...
Attending the event, organized by the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, are state governors, traditional leaders, civil society organizations, and development partners. A long list of partners, including the traditional institution in Nigeria, hailed the initiative and pledged their support.
Friends, colleagues, this is a time for Nigeria to take center stage to address the issues of maternal mortality, the high rates of stunting, to ensure that every family has access to good quality care.
It's no exaggeration to say that today could be a turning point for Nigeria and indeed for Africa. The scale of your ambition is a model for other countries, and if implemented, it will send a powerful message throughout our continent that universal health coverage is possible.
We will give our total commitment 100% so that Nigeria will be a healthy country.
For those who have a major role to play in ensuring the Health Sector Renewal Compact is a success, this is a historic moment.
We expect, and at least we have heard, at least $3 billion in pooled and non-pooled financing in the period 2024 to 2026, which is a huge milestone to be channeled towards improving our primary healthcare system and achieving results for Nigerians.
Our mandate to collaborate closely with the Federal Ministry of Health and ensure that the provisions of this compact are translated into practical and measurable actions.
Federal Republic of Nigeria to address us.
President Tinubu says the occasion highlights this administration's stance on quality health for Nigerians.
Delivering improved quality health. The outcome is an underpinning factor in my promise of renewed hope. That hope is ignited here today, and with your support, health is back on the front burner. Recognizing the importance of primary health care as the cornerstone of a resilient, integrated healthcare system, my administration is embarking on massive effort from 2024 to refurb physical infrastructure, equipment, and retraining of frontline health workers in collaboration with all the 36 states.
It's a historic day that highlights the points behind the universal health coverage, that everyone should have access to quality health services without financial difficulties. And after all is said and done here, what is expected is that the benefits of this partnership will reach every Nigerian across the country. From the State House, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
Okay, welcome back. Yes, those are some of the issues and more that we'll focus on here this morning. And as you've seen there, we've got Professor Ali Pate, the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare. Good morning, Prof, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed, a significant day yesterday. And you know, when we hear them say quality health to reach all Nigerians, and immediately I see systems all in place. I see emergency ambulance. I can call someone, then they're driving, pick one up, get to the hospital. So almost utopian in my mindset. Maybe you should bring me back to earth. What should we expect? What is this about, basically?
I think what you see, as you said, is the vision.
Okay.
That vision has been laid out, and I think the president laid it out, and the underlying direction that, in fact, he wants to go to take this country as part of his renewed hope agenda In fact, it's Nigeria where what you have seen is manifest. And yesterday, what we saw was the culmination of the consensus at the national level that the president led, where we have the state governments partnering with the federal government to invest in those services to actualize this vision, whereby primary healthcare, basic healthcare is available to Nigerians. And our development partners coming along to say, look, we've bought into this vision and will partner with the government and the whole breadth of Nigerian society, whether it's the traditional leaders, religious leaders, or civil society, or private sector, or philanthropists, almost a national consensus that is built around this vision that the president has explicated. Now we move forward to the execution of that, which is to make the physical infrastructure available, the equipment to be available, training of the health workers to start with the guidelines that we are now revamping, and to track that process, the execution, so that we'll have a clear path that we are making progress in actualizing that vision. That is what has been set for Nigerians yesterday.
Okay. I see in your statement there, you talk about the strategic blueprints being to save lives, reduce both physical and financial pain, and produce health for all Nigerians. You also plan to reform and implement the National Health System as provided for in the National Health Act. We know that we have some lovely policies in this country. Implementation is a huge challenge. Now you also seem to have identified that here. So the part that the governors were also present, how do you plan, where do you want to start with this?
So first of all, for 8 years, on getting to 9 years, we've had a National Health Act passed in 2014, which provided for the National Health System, comprising the Federal Ministry of Health and the state ministries of health and other actors coming together. That National Health System hadn't come together until yesterday, when this president pushed forward, got a compact between federal government, states, and development partners coming along. That is a major step in terms of implementation of that vision of the Federal Republic of Nigeria coming along to invest in the health of the population. Secondly, the federal government increased its own allocation for health, including at the front ends. In 2014, you will see as the appropriation is concluded, that's the direction. The expectation is that states will also match that, will also reciprocate, increase their own allocation, and we will track the increases, the releases, and the pace of execution. Thirdly, human resources are the lifeblood of the health system. So the plans to retrain 120,000 frontline health workers is real. They are all in the states. They're all employed by the state governments. We will retool them, train them with the skills that is necessary to interface with our population, to give care to pregnant women, children, those who are ill in our primary healthcare centers, but also to refer them to secondary facilities and teaching hospitals when need arises. Those are practical things that Nigerians would experience and will lead to better production of health, will save their lives, will reduce pain, both physically and also the financial pain, because we'll be expanding the Vulnerable Groups Fund through the National Health Insurance Authority, as you heard Mr. President say, so that it targets those who are most vulnerable, and that's on the financial pain.
That insurance part, we'll still come to that, because that is a huge component for all of this. So I'm also shed a little more light, if you will, on this. So is it that you have a plan of action? Are there action points wherein you can say, okay, look, this is what the federal government wants to achieve and the country should achieve. On the part of the federal government, we have A, B, C, or D. On the part of the states, you have this. Have you identified those targets? Is it in primary healthcare? Will they cut across board? And then we know states don't earn the same. They budget differently. So are they supposed to budget the same for health sector or according to their capacity, clearly?
I think all of us recognize that health is so fundamental, and states need to move up in terms of the allocation. We're far below where we should be. As you recall, many years ago, the Abuja commitment was formed here. We haven't met it. Our government is moving up. Some states have increased, and some states have increased the allocation but have not released over the years what they have even budgeted. So the political prioritization implies that the budget is increased, but also the releases are increased and more timely to the institutions in the respective states and to use those resources well. So there's the issue of getting the spending, the quality of it, better health for the money that is being spent, in addition to more money to be spent. We have a very concrete plan and targets. In fact, we have signed a compact. The President has a compact with his team that specifies what we will deliver. And that's key to our own job security as well, to help deliver on this vision that he has laid out. And so with that, we expect states to also, let's say, complement the federal government in that direction. At the end of the day, we will improve the health of Nigerians if we, as the Nigerian state, build consensus that this is important. We need to invest, we need to get it done. And you saw that yesterday with the compact. President, governors, development partners, civil society, all of us deciding that investing in health is in our best collective interest. And that's what we are going to do.
Well, so I'm looking at everything that you've said, and it looks like it's targeted at people who are going to be sick in future. Not for people who are sick today or people who need medical attention. I mean, if you're pregnant, you're not exactly sick. But if any of those people were to be watching you, if any of those people were to be listening to what it is that you're explaining happened yesterday and how that affects their current situation, what would you be telling them?
So all Nigerians are clients of the health sector. Those who are sick today, we are attending to them. And through our teaching hospitals, through the primary healthcare system, I think there are some services that have been delivered. There are some that are sick, but do not yet know that they are sick. Identifying them, screening them, that's something that we're also working on to improve the availability so that folks will know whether they have non-communicable disease that haven't yet manifested so they can be arrested. But the generality of Nigerians who are presently healthy, how do you keep them to be healthy? And if you look at the blueprint that we have, is to produce health, meaning to exercise, to eat well, and to avoid the behaviors that put their lives at risk. They are also an important stakeholder group so that we don't get them to get sick. For those who are sick today, there are things happening. Recently, we invested and launched the human papillomavirus vaccine, for instance. That's a preventative vaccine that prevents future cervical cancer. But there are screenings of women that are available. We are revamping the infrastructure. In our teaching hospital today, there are services being provided. Now, is it adequate? I think there is room for improvement. That's why as we go forward as part of this president's direction to renew the hope of Nigerians, we're saying that we will do more. And with the federal government and states working together and our development partners, yesterday they announced almost $3 billion over the next 3 years in terms of parallel pooled and non-pooled but aligned investment to support this direction that Nigeria is going. And that's very helpful. But that's not going to be enough by itself. It needs to be complemented by all parts of our government in terms of this direction for it to be realized. The federal government alone will not, by its own actions or resources alone, be enough to translate or to improve the health of Nigerians. All levels of government will need to play their part, and Nigerians themselves will need to play their part. Yesterday at the UHC Day, very early in the morning, the Federal Ministry of Health had a walk to demonstrate that individuals can also take action in terms of producing health by doing the behaviors that are necessary to prevent them from getting on the path to getting chronic diseases. So there are many facets of action that Nigeria as a collective will need to take for the health of the population of Nigeria to improve, not only the health of specific individuals.
And we hope that Nigerians, that there will be increased campaign in that regard, and maybe policies that would also encourage firms and, companies to be able to take action.
Even when constructing roads, build walkways.
Sure
that people
those kinds of
find
things
it easy.
And also people shouldn't drive on walkways. Yep. There'll be so much, so much to do in that particular area. But I know that this is not the first time that we've tried something. You talked about the Health Act being signed in 2014. In 2015, when Professor Isaac Adewale was the Minister of Health, one of the things he did say then was that they were trying to go back to the roots, which was, go back to primary health care. The plan then was to build 1,000 primary health care centers. I think they wanted, or even, 774, but they were looking at 1,000 eventually. And the federal government was even willing to intervene at that primary level. I don't know how far they got on the agenda, but this is not the first time we're seeing a system involving state governments. Why are you optimistic that it will work this time around?
I think some fundamentals have changed. The political will is there, much, in my view, in an unprecedented way. And you had the Director General of the World Health Organization commending Mr. President for this ambitious agenda. First, the political will. And you saw the Nigeria Governors Forum and all the governors that showed up to really support that. So that is the starting point. Secondly, we're not building new primary health care centers alone. There are existing primary health care that are dysfunctional, don't have roofs, don't have furniture. Those are very practical things that can be done, and those have been assessed. An assessment of all the primary health care facilities in Nigeria. That is a basis, and there is resource allocated. If you talk about doing anything and you don't allocate the resources to it, that's almost like fiction. But in this instance, there is a deliberate plan, and there is resources. There are resources being allocated towards that, and additional ones that we have raised for our development partners who also spoke about it yesterday, that we would make use of to translate these ideas into action, and then a mechanism to track that progress, so that a year from now, when we have the first joint annual health review, we may not get to all the facilities that we want to get in the next 4 years, but we will start to move in that direction. We can be able to tell you how many frontline health workers have been trained over time. And that will be visible, and we committed in the compact that we will make it visible. That coordination across all levels and that transparency, that accountability has been a key missing part of the conversation around improving health. We're trying to fix that, and that compact is a first major step. It has never been done, where federal government and states had a broad-based compact signed alongside the development partners to move in one direction, in a sector-wide way, as opposed to various activities, each one doing his or her own corner in the sector. So it's a very coordinated direction to push everyone in the direction of investing in the front lines, investing in the things that will make the health of Nigerians better, so that the experience of Nigerians with the health system will improve. It requires also the population, the citizen engagement as a component of that. Civil society were there. We have had People's Voices survey. We visited the facility to see for ourselves how they are. That is very key, that the Nigerian people are also party to the production of health. Because you cannot just produce health in a health facility. The population themselves have to behave, to accept vaccines. Talk about vaccines, diphtheria. Folks have children that have diphtheria. 98% of those who have diphtheria had not been vaccinated. So those are the things that even when you provide, Nigerian population has to buy into it, and we work together to produce health.
Prof, pardon me to just jump in on that note. Vaccine hesitancy. This came across in passing, though. I didn't pay too much attention because that wasn't what I was looking for at the time. There was this material circulating about cervical cancer vaccines in this country, that people shouldn't go for it or something.
That's the HPV.
Yeah, have you heard about that? What's going on with that?
No, this myth gets circulated by conspiracy theorists. They're baseless. This is not the first country. Several developing countries have had this vaccine for years. This is a vaccine that has been developed, has been tested. It's safe, it's effective, and there isn't enough of it, and it costs resources. Federal government raised the resources, put the mechanism in place, and said, look, bring your wards to protect them against the future threat of cervical cancer. We've got 8,000 women every year who lose their lives from this disease that is now preventable. So it only takes a parent or a leader who does not understand the value of this to say, look, I will rather expose my daughter to the risk of having cervical cancer later in her life. So that misunderstanding is there, and we've tried to address it. And to be fair, Nigerians did not follow those lone voices. We had a very successful first phase launch of the cervical cancer vaccine. 78% coverage in the states that participated in it. And the second phase will be in the next, in the first quarter of 2024. So Nigerians did not heed these lone voices on the side. And these are conspiracy theorists who oftentimes, I would say, based on pseudoscience, because the science is very clear This is safe. This is effective. And it's been done in countries in Africa, countries in the Middle East, countries in Western countries, and everywhere.
Part of the controversy we've also seen, sorry to interrupt you, will be what ages of women, because oftentimes some people say it was just for girls. Oh, no, the teenagers is still okay. By the time you're an adult, it's no longer effective. Can you tell us clearly what ages should be accepting the HPV?
9 to 14 is the best age to get that, because the HPV transmission begins to rise beyond that age. So you need to protect. This is a virus that is slow in the changes that it causes in the cervix, and that it takes years for the cancer to start to develop and to manifest itself. So you have to do it at the time when the protection that the vaccine offers would be useful, rather than wait on it. It's late when already the virus had infected the young person and has begun to initiate the changes against cervical cancer. That is based on very strong scientific evidence, and that's why it's done.
9 to 14, you say?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure that you're also aware of the many challenges that currently face the health sector, and each day we're inundated by the news. Just yesterday was MD Khan that was letting us know how many consultants were leaving our country almost on a yearly basis. I mean, about 1,000 consultants, we understand, have left over.
NARD, as of July, said 9,000.
Wow. So MD Khan is speaking of NARD. Thankfully, they haven't gone on any strike in recent times. Also have their own issues as well. And right now, we know that their members are also suffering. If you speak to the nurses, they also have their own. And almost every sector, or almost every specialty within the healthcare range or the healthcare line, if you speak to them, you will suddenly hear tales of war and how a lot of Nigerians are leaving the country for greener pastures. This must be something of concern to you. When you talk about retraining 120,000 people, I'm wondering, are there still 120,000 of them left? How are you looking? Every time you see these headlines, how do you respond to them?
So that's precisely the point. I think you need to frame the conversation around those who are staying. There are many more health workers that are staying, serving in this country, sometimes in not easy circumstances, sometimes facing challenges in their states, in their villages, in rural areas, but they are still working hard to serve our population. They get ignored. The focus, unfortunately, becomes on those who are choosing to leave. So we appreciate those who are working very hard to serve our population, because at the end of the day, it is Nigerians that will fix this health care system and this country. That is what the president, I think even yesterday, alluded to, that we need to appreciate them, we need to invest in them, we need to make life easier, we need to improve their welfare, we need to have the infrastructure, the diagnostics, and all of that. For those who are choosing to leave for whatever reason they are leaving, I think what we are going to be doing is to expand the training so that we produce more. In the event that some leave, some will stay. And for those recipient countries that are actually taking some of this, they are taking where they did not sow, in the sense that Nigeria has invested in high-quality education, training these young people to university, almost debt-free in many instances. And when they are just ready to serve the country, they walk out to go to countries that did not invest in their training. So what we're asking is those countries get in line, and if you take 7,000, invest in producing 7,000 doctors. That's only fair.
Does it work like that?
Well, that's what we're asking. In response, I mean, just look at it. Morally, is it defensible that you take what you did not produce?
I thought the doctor just wanted to look for greener pastures.
Well, but the doctors did not train themselves.
Oh, but didn't they pay their school fees themselves?
Well,
is it the ones that went on scholarship or what?
Well, the doctors get trained.
Yeah.
But for the recipient countries that are getting this label, they are taking from what they did not sow. And why are we asking for them to expand the training? Because it makes sense. You brought the issue of thousands that are leaving. And they leave for various reasons. Some legitimate, some for greener pastures, and there are so many reasons, family reasons, to advance themselves. And some will definitely come back. But as countries recruit them, and there are some countries that come into Nigeria, come to African countries and recruit health workers actively. What we are asking is, it just makes sense to invest also in the pre-service training. None of those countries are investing in the pre-service training. Can you at least expand the training of those? Can you help train more so that as people choose to leave, we're also being replenished? But if you're taking only and you're depleting, you're constraining the health sector even further, is that the outcome that we want?
So what's the response of these countries? Have they responded to us?
Well, we've seen in other countries compacts being signed between the recipient countries and those countries.
Okay.
In Ekiti, 4 weeks ago, we did pass a resolution as a Council on Health to engage with the bilateral partners to see how they can begin to expand the pre-service training. Yesterday, as part of this compact that was signed, it was raised. So we're moving forward to discuss with some of the recipient countries the prospect for them engaging with us in expanding the pre-service training of medical workers.
How many countries have we spoken to about this?
Well, there are many countries that take our physicians. I think there are those that go to the UK and to the United States. What we've passed as a policy is that we'll engage with them so that we draw the collaboration with them to expand the pre-service training in our country. That is where we're going.
All right, there's health insurance, there's fake drugs, there's so many, but my colleagues in Lagos have got questions for you too, Prof. Go ahead, Jen.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. Good morning, Professor Patti. Perhaps, what would make them stay, following on the strength of Malpe's question, would be the national budget. And that's been at the heart of the conversation for medical practitioners, both at home and on the international scene. You said earlier that states should come up in terms of what they commit to the health sector. But I wonder if the federal government is leading by example in that regard, when you consider that in the latest budget that has been presented by the administration, it's just about 5% that has been devoted to the health sector. If you consider neighboring Ghana is doing 6%, they are moving closer to the Abuja Declaration. Even Rwanda, which is the template for development in Africa now, has 7% committed to its national budget in the last check, at least in 2020. So in 2023, it should have gone up. Why is it increasingly difficult for Nigeria to up its commitment to the health sector amid so many competing needs in that sector?
Yes, I think you mentioned 5%. You should note that it's from 3.68% to 5%. That's already an increment in 1 year. And I think that's commendable on the part of the president and the federal government to increase health allocation. And we'll need to use those resources. And where we're channeling those resources, including the infrastructure, upgrades of our teaching hospitals, of our primary healthcare centers, equipping them, cancer equipment, for instance, many of the elements that are necessary to improve the working environment for the health workers. So you should see in the year to come, this first really key budget of Renewed Hope, that the infrastructure and the equipping of the facilities would be improved. And that's a start. We hope that over time that will be sustained, but the states can also complement the federal government in expanding also their budgetary allocation. Overall, as a country, are we spending enough? We are not. I think there is a lot more that is being spent out of pocket by Nigerians. And the public component of it, it's really below what it should be, as you said, compared to other comparator countries. But there's a start. There's a start, and we have made that start with this increase from 3.68% to 5% of the federal government allocation. And if that is sustained, and if we use those resources and begin to produce the results, I believe that we should see sustaining of that direction that has been set by our government.
talking about sustained direction, there's 774 billion naira here for personnel costs for the year 2024. What's the guarantee, Honorable Minister, that this will cover the concerns of the National Association of Resident Doctors that went on strike many times in the preceding year over non-payment of their medical residency training fund, the consolidated medical salary structure, skipping arrears, the demand for training, such that the congestion or the lack of personnel within the health institutions can be addressed. So what's the guarantee that this amount will address these concerns such that we can have stability in the federal government health institutions in the coming year?
Yes, I think you will notice that in the last 6 months of this administration, we have had stability in terms of the rancor that used to affect this sector. The strikes have become much less frequent, and in fact, various health professional associations, unions have been very responsible, trying to work with this administration to bring up issues that have been outstanding for many years and to get them addressed over time, and not take strikes as the first mode of almost coercing government, but rather to take a constructive view that let's put the Nigerian people at the center of our attention, and all the differences that exist across professional groups or between professional groups and government and commitment that have been done but unmet, let's address them in a responsible manner over time. And I think that is a direction that we are going, so that the sector becomes more stable, that we serve the clients of the sector, and the professionals increasingly get what is due for them, and that they get treated with the respect and the appreciation which we have for their work. It's only fair that those who are working in very difficult circumstances, the health workers that are out there, they are appreciated as well. And we are doing that, and we're engaging with them. In fact, even later today, I will be meeting with 3 of those associations. And we are in constant dialogue to see how we can make things better. It's not easy because there are, I will say, several years, at least 10 years of promises, negotiations that have happened over time, and all kinds of issues that have been outstanding. So, but it will not be something that we can just say resolve in 1 month or 2 months, but in the last few months, I think we've had a very constructive set of engagements with various groups, whether it's the Medical Association, the resident doctors. And for instance, you mentioned the National Association of Resident Doctors in particular. They had a strike earlier in June, July. And usually there is this policy that was existing of no work, no pay. This president, in his wisdom, gave an exceptional waiver that, in fact, allowed the government to look behind what it could have extracted from them, in the spirit that we will work constructively going forward to avoid situations whereby strikes become the norm, where lives are lost. These are Nigerian lives that we are also trying to protect, and we shouldn't use Nigerian lives as a bargaining chip. And I think professional groups, whether they are doctors, whether they are nurses, whether they are pharmacists, I think understand that.
Well, Professor Pate,
for the health sector, the unionism that we practice would be different, or should be different.
Pardon me if I may come in there. I'm just trying to seek clarity. Are you saying that the engagement you're having with these associations means that you are going to meet these concerns over time, not in the immediate, in immediate time? Are you saying that you're meeting them over time? Are you saying that there is no guarantee that you are going to implement increase in salaries in the short term rather than long term?
I think for what is within the control of the health sector, those elements, we're engaging them in a constructive manner, and we would be addressing those constraints over time. And I do believe that they understand as well. And so far, it's been a very, very healthy dialogue that we have maintained. And I've mentioned to you the specific instance where, in fact, there's been reciprocity, for instance, with regards to the resident doctors. So we will continue in that direction. At the end of the day, the fractious relationship between government and unions is not healthy for anyone, not for the health workers, not for government, not for Nigerian citizens. So we all have to rally around and say, okay, what is it that is feasible and what can we agree on? And if we don't agree on certain aspects, also be sure that we put them clearly so that there is no, let's say, promises that are met but not kept, because these are things that have been there for many, many years in a way.
I ask because remuneration is at the heart of some of the issues, that caused this mass exodus of medical personnel from the country to other countries in search of greener pastures. And I wonder if the administration is in full realization of this and will act to, implement better working conditions in the form of remuneration and other allowances. I wonder if you answered Marquette's question earlier on about whether we really do have 120,000 medical workers that you say the administration plans to retrain in the short term. Because at the last check of the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, they say that Nigeria has about 40,000 medical workers. I hope that I got that figure correctly, but I know that it is far below the 120,000 that you're proposing to train. So can you clarify where you are bringing that figure from, 120,000?
Yes, no, I will. And in fact, I'll share with Channels TV the distribution of the health workforce in Nigeria. We have got about 800,000 health labor force in this country. Much of those health workforce are in the public sector. About 25% or so is in the private sector. The frontline workers, we've got about 70,000 community health workers, about 50,000. I'm giving you an estimate in my mind of nurses, midwives. We've got pharmacists, doctors that are in Nigeria, are working in various parts of our country, sometimes in very difficult circumstances. So in the context of remuneration, you should understand that health workers are a very special breed. Whoever goes into healthcare profession has an intrinsic motivation to help others. So it's not driven by just monetary incentives alone. That many folks go into the healthcare industry to serve others, and that, in a way, should not be taken for granted, even though compensation is as important also in there, as opposed to other professions where the money itself is a key driver. Whether you're a nurse, whether you're a midwife, or a medical doctor, or a pharmacist, or in any healthcare profession, there seems to be, let's say, an underappreciation of the intrinsic motivation that selects folks to go there. If you want to make a lot of money, you can go into some other industries that you make tons of money. But those who are willing to serve others, to save lives, to reduce pain, are a special breed. And yes, the remuneration, I think, is a key component of it, making it regular, making it, making them have living wage, yes. But that's not the primary reason that people will just pack their things and go.
Right. So if you insist that we have 120,000 health workers across the country, public, private, are they enough? If they aren't, what figure are we targeting?
I'm sorry, sir. I think you did not understand what I was saying. We have much more than that in terms of the healthcare workforce.
Right.
The frontline health workers is what I'm referring to. That are existing. There are more than 60,000 community health workers of different cadres, but nurses and midwives. I think if you just step out into primary healthcare centers in some of the areas that you'll see them. I've seen them. There are many of them. They are registered with the various regulatory bodies. You can also ask the MDCN or the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria. Those numbers are there, and I will provide the chart that describes the health workforce for you to have a better understanding of what we have. And the focus of the conversation, while it's not to be ignored that some are leaving, we should also appreciate those that are staying. Because there are some that are staying and working very hard in sometimes very difficult circumstances, facing all kinds of challenges that all Nigerians are facing right now.
Right.
And these challenges that we're facing are not going to be with us forever. I think going forward, we do see, in fact, there can be light at the end of the tunnel if we can work towards solving the immediate challenges that we're facing as a people.
Well, Honorable Minister, so my question is still that, I mean, now you say we even have way more than 120,000. As it stands right now, I know we're trying to look at the cup half full, which is very important. We need to, of course, salvage what we have left and ensure we make the most of it. So do we have enough health workers in Nigeria? That's my question. So if we don't have enough, what is our target?
Yes. So that's a better question now.
Well, that was what I asked earlier.
Enough, we don't have enough. No, you referred to 120,000 as if it were the totality of the health workforce that we had, which I think you did not understand. But we don't have enough. And in fact, by 2030, we have a deficit relative to the standard that we should have, and that we need to produce more. And that's why, but 4 weeks ago, we doubled the quotas for our schools of nursing and midwifery to double their quotas, to double their intake. But as we expand that, there needs to be also the investment in terms of the infrastructure, the training materials, so that we are not trading quantity for quality. We also need to maintain quality. The reason why our health workers found attractive by others is because we've got good quality training programs to start with. And that's something that we need to maintain so that we don't produce health workers that are not at the quality that is necessary to provide the best healthcare service. So we're expanding that, and that is part of the effort that government has already moved in that direction, and we're calling on others to invest in the pre-service training of health workers so that we can replenish the pool. Globally, I hope this is not a Nigerian issue alone. Globally, let me just finish. Globally, there is almost an 18 million health worker shortage in the world. So it's a global phenomenon because many of the Western countries are aging and require health workers to help serve their needs, and therefore are extracting the health workforce from many countries, not only Nigeria. So health worker migration is not just a Nigeria phenomenon, it's also a global phenomenon. And we're trying to deal with it in our own context, just as other countries are also dealing it in their own context. I think we should put it in the proper context.
I think at the end of the day, the goal is to work together to ensure we have better healthcare in Nigeria, because it's what we'll use anyway, wherever you are. I know that the target, or at least a promise was given as far back as July, that the funding for health will be 10% of the budget. What we have now is, what, 5% or thereabouts, which is still a long shot. And that was from the presidency itself, saying there will be 10% funding, and it was categorically said. I mean, we've had situations in Luth, for example, where you have auxiliary staff saying they earn 30,000 naira, they've sought increment, nothing is coming. There was that report as well that some wards were collapsed. Well, majorly, the management said it was for renovation, but it still alluded to the fact that this, I would say, Japa syndrome is also responsible for it. When the president said yesterday that doctors, even health workers abroad, should please come home, the question then is, what will be in it for them? And I hope you can use this opportunity to speak to them right now. What's in it for them? I mean, I've had conversations with a lot of them who say they don't mind coming to share their expertise. Home is always home, whether you like it or not. But what's in it for them in terms of the funding? They said that 10% of the population is responsible for 60% of the funding of health sector. So questions about health insurance, how equitable is it, universal health coverage, even the policies. If you were to speak to these health workers abroad that the president is asking to come home, what would you tell them is in it for them?
I will just quote for them what the former U.S. President John F. Kennedy stated. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I think if they can answer that, they will find the right answers in themselves. Because wherever they go, they serve other populations. And there are many reasons why they will choose to do that, but whether part-time, whether on medical missions, and there are many health workers in the diaspora who are already expressing interest, and some are coming back and serving here, setting up private practice, doing medical missions, and we appreciate them. The Association of Nigerian Physicians in America, which I was, when it was founded, I was also doing my training, and there are many others in the United Kingdom who are always looking for where they can contribute. as opportunities become available, whether in the public sector, whether in the private sector, they cannot earn what they're earning in the United States. You cannot earn $1 million a year in Nigeria in the government service. You may earn that in the United Kingdom or the United States. But there is something beyond money as a motivator for serving your population. And as you ask me to say what they should be thinking about, let them ask not what Nigeria can do for them, but what they can do for Nigeria, because this is the country that they have. Wherever you are a Nigerian. Whether you're in Australia or Europe, they will always look at you as a Nigerian, as an African.
All right. I think that quote will work for politicians as well, Prof. They should ask not what money can. It's not just about money. They should also try and do a lot to serve the people properly. But unfortunately, we can't touch on health insurance, the conduct of health workers to Nigerians, manufacturing concerns here, which are issues I imagine that the ministry will be thinking about addressing as well, especially since, you know, there's an MOU. And I know that at the end of the day, I know you'll be optimistic that your own mark will be higher than several others having signed this, but everybody looks forward to a good healthcare system, actually. So we'll have to thank you for coming on, Professor Ali Pate, Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare. Did we touch on the social welfare bit?
I already underlined that. Well, I guess we'll have to have another conversation with you very soon.
Because when we hear social welfare, it's a different mindset for social welfare.
Really, I think the President spoke about it repeatedly. Okay. It's a government philosophy to improve the social welfare of Nigerians. And it's not necessarily only what the Ministry of Health does. There are other facets of the administration that are dealing with the intersection of the well-being of Nigerians, whether it's the Ministry of Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation, whether it's Women Affairs, whether it's the youth, whether it's education, whether it's police, with the affairs of the welfare of the police force and the defense. So it's the welfare of Nigerians overall. It's almost a philosophy of governance.
How do you intend to measure that?
Well, I think if this administration 2 to 3 years and see what the president is able to do in terms of the agenda he's laid out, I think Nigerians will experience that. Because probably the best answer will be the experience of Nigerians over time.
Because a lot of people are expecting so much from the health, from almost everywhere, because that's why they were elected in the first place. So thank you for coming on, Prof, and all the best to you and your team.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Well, back in a moment. Don't go away.
Idea of the president being petroleum minister is not a good idea. The last president was minister of petroleum for 8 years. When I was governor of Central Bank, we had a petroleum minister. So when I talked about NNPC, I could attack Dizani. Now nobody can talk about petroleum because 8 years, if you talk, you're attacking the president. We need that buffer. Somebody has to be there. So a minister has to be there who is held accountable by Nigerians. Why is NNPC not able to bring in dollars? I'm sorry, this is the question that cost me my job. I will continue asking this question until NNPC is fixed or until I die. Where are the dollars? We need to shine light on NNPC. The finance minister cannot tell you that today, this is how many barrels of oil that we produce and exported. You can only rely on NNPC telling him. Those barrels are revenue. They belong to finance. We've been talking about this for 10 years. We are no longer paying subsidy. So where are the dollars? Before it was under recovery. Now we don't have under recovery. Where is the money? And by the way, let me advise that this idea of the president being petroleum minister is not a good idea. When I was governor of Central Bank, we had a petroleum minister. So when I talked about NNPC, I could attack Dizani.
Yes, indeed, as you've seen there, Dr. Tunde Olusunle joins us now. He's a fellow, Association of Nigerian Authors. He's also former special assistant to the president. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Markway.
Quite a number of things playing out in the polity, and perhaps maybe you might want to start with that. I mean, you were in the corridors at some point, and so you have an understanding. In fact, the president, too, was the Minister of Health at the time. I mean, the Minister of Petroleum. So what was the thinking behind that in the first place?
Well, thank you very much for having me again. Because petroleum is almost a singular product which drives our economy. When President Obasanjo came in 1999, he thought that this should be supervised directly by him. I can't remember that we even had a Minister of State under Obasanjo. We had a special advisor in Dr. Rilwan Lukman. So through and through, the administration of the petroleum sector was driven by the president. But again, he gave quite some latitude to the people who were handling a brief on his behalf. We had Rilwan Lukman, we had Giyos Obaseki, we also had Engineer Funsho Ugbolokun, who was an assistant to the president, reporting to the president on petroleum. So, you know, in a manner of speaking, we probably want to talk about the fact that there were enough eyes overseeing that sector.
There was a team.
There was a team, you know. And yeah, I think they were fairly effective. And as the administration grew, I think Obasanjo actually even let go in a bit. Dr. Dakoru, you know, at some point was advisor. And I think that was when there was the issue of the recalibration of the office into Minister of State began. You know, so that's what.
So when they say that if you talk about the ministry and if the president was a substantive minister, so you will look as if you're attacking him. Is that how the presidents think, if people talk about that?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it depends on the tolerance level of whoever is in charge. But I think, you know, the former emir in this instance was probably talking about, you know, how very insular, you know, the previous regime was. And, you know, how unadvisable they were. Because, you know, information was probably not even getting to them. The correspondence route under the president like Obasanjo was very direct. There were very few interlopers who could keep aside your memo from getting to the president. And give it to him. He was also a very energetic person. He read his memos and his correspondences wherever he was going. Anything that would take him away from his office for 5-6 hours by way of a trip, for instance, he had his folio there with him, looking at documents. So, but unfortunately, in subsequent dispensations, the last advert we listened to was saying, you know, talked about the absence of a petroleum minister vis-a-vis when he was CBN, when there was a minister in Desiani Alison Madweke. Again, I'm not holding brief for the last administration or for the continuation of that tradition in the present milieu. But we probably have witnessed in the last 8-9 years now that again, the ministry has reverted to direct supervision under the president through the Minister of State.
Do you think that, pardon me jumping, do you think this president should actually not be the Minister of Petroleum?
It doesn't have to be. I think there are enough hands in this country to help out. We just have to put somebody there who knows his onions. You don't have to be a petroleum engineer or whatever, but you know, there has to be somebody accountable to us. Because just like you said, if you have any issues now and you want to criticize happenings in that ministry, they're going to be misconstrued, you know, in a kind of, you know, policy where people are unnecessarily edgy and touchy, you know, about issues.
But this president has said time and again, look, we asked for this job. We welcome criticisms. They will come. So can we then say that he'll be touchy?
He might not be touchy, but don't forget that there's always a chain, you know, of aides around the president. So there are people who actually make these imputations, usually on his behalf. You know, but like I said, I mean, if he has the stamina for paperwork, he should be able to gloss over things like this. You know, but again, like I said, there are bus stops. So you don't know how these people are going to interpret these issues before they get to him. The president is one individual. He is not a Superman ordinarily. So there will be people too, like I said, officers, state officials who are at various bus stops on route decisions and implementation.
Well, I know that the jury is to be out as to whether or not the president should be minister or not. Yeah. But, you know, we've obviously tried both experiences, and I don't think the Nigerians have been satisfied with the outcome of any one of them. And when we had the minister for petroleum...
people keep reminding us that the number of barrels that we put out there by way of saying we produce every day could be more, because we don't have a metering system at the point, you know, of sale. And we've also had to, you know, in instances where even the pipeline has been interfered with, trespassed at various junctions and intersections, where people actually take this directly to serve their own, you know, private and indigenous mini refineries, as it were. So, you know, it's a whole web around it. And, you know, coming back to what we're saying, unfortunately, maybe because of the way, you know, the thing went between 2010 and 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari probably believed in his own wisdom. It was better to revert the office to him. Unfortunately, too, I mean, there would have been lapses because, you know, he probably was not a handsome person like Obasanjo.
But I think for me, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of opacity. What people have asked for is more transparency and accountability on the part of the NNPC and in general, the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. We've now seen 2 ministers of state appointed in that sector, one to look at gas and the other to actually look at the ministry itself. With respect to opacity, do you think that we're getting more transparency? As the NNPC says, oh, now we audit our books and they're there for anybody to see. But it doesn't look like we're still satisfied about the level of accountability that we're getting from Nigeria's oil.
Absolutely. In fact, oil is just one of the things we're not getting, you know, enough information or data from. Government also gets resources from other sectors. Can we, for instance, be very sure that it is the X trillions of naira that an organization like the Federal Inland Revenue Service actually gets in for us? You know, I mean, is this correct to the last million or the last couple? Can we say the same thing about the collection system with the Nigerian Customs Service? So there are, you know, it's a myriad of issues that come in. You know, petroleum is major, but we shouldn't forget these other ones too. So, you know, what we are calling there for, what we should be calling on there for, is, you know, for across-board transparency in the business of governance. It's very important.
And speaking about that, what is your impression about how this government is trudging on so far?
It's been, you know, the journey, you know, in many instances has been characterized by fits and starts. The president at some point told us, for instance, that the removal of oil subsidy was not in his speech on March 29, 2023. And he told us that, you know, something like a spirit of courage possessed him at that point. And he spoke extempore, removing the subsidy. We've been hearing in recent weeks and months that government might have actually reverted to subtle subsidy, maybe under the table somehow. The other day, you know, we talked about asking universities to revert 40% of their earnings to the federal government. And then we buckle again, we recant. Oh, don't worry, we don't want to disrupt the system. So we go forward again on the issue of students' loan. And, you know, I hope it eventually develops a framework. But right now, it just seems like stuff in the air. So, you know, we can go on and go. You know, too many, you know, knee jerks, too many, you know, backs and fronts and all that. Maybe we want to just put it to the relative youthfulness of the team in terms of, calendrical, numbers now, 6-7 months. But Nigerians actually deserve a lot more, especially for a government that says from Eagle Square, we are going to hit the ground running.
Yeah. Two things, Doctor. First, is that a sign, is it a good sign or what? Because some say, well, they interpret that as such that, well, they're listening to the people. So some think, yeah, well, not a good sign, but others think otherwise. How do we relate to that?
Well, you might be listening to the people, but, what blueprints did you also bring to the fore? So what are you acting on? What are you, addressing your mind to? You probably came with ABCD, and did you work it out? Did you do a SWOT analysis? Did you open it up for dissection so that you know that, well, if we do this, we have to do that? Government said they were removing subsidy, but there are no palliatives. We're just talking about CNG buses now and all that, which we haven't started seeing.
But about that subsidy, it was already in the law. So is it that maybe because he spoke about it then, it brought a lot more attention. The previous government just didn't implement it. So it was already there. So were we actually going to be up in arms against it? Because if we were, shouldn't we have done something as a country when they said, look, it's already in the laws here. So if they meant to, why didn't they just say, look, remove it from the laws? So they left it for whoever was going to come in.
I don't know whether it was in the laws, but it probably had been proposed.
The Act, Petroleum Industry Act.
Okay, fine, But, just like I said, the waiting period, the gestation period between when you win an election and when you come provides you some window, for reflection. We wouldn't have known what Mr. President's advisors, told him about this, which informed his position. We give credit to the president. In some instance, there are good technocrats in places. So let's hope that he's availing himself of the deep wisdom of his people.
But when you were in government, did government always get the picture about what the people are really facing? Because there's a school of thought that says, look, they are insulated from the reality. They go in all those convoys, they have all the privileges.
We did in my time.
Okay.
Very much so, because Obasanjo started out with something that was supposed to be a grooming process for future leadership. So you had a situation where for every brief level of a minister, there was an assistant or an advisor. I, for instance, added, sports oversight to my own work. So wherever the president couldn't go in the world, the minister went and I went. And I had a more direct line to the president. So I could call the State House and I speak to Mr. President. Kanu Nwankwo is here with me. Okota is here, Mr. President, they want to say hello to you. This was the Obasanjo era. Now, there was no discrimination about this memo is not coming from a minister or something like that. Obasanjo wanted to read everything. And Obasanjo picks his call after the first 2 rings. He didn't outsource things like this. He wants to be the first person to hear. If Obasanjo needs to cross-check what you're telling him, very direct person, unfortunately can occasionally embarrass you. When you tell him that, Mr. President, this is what is going on, he tells them, call me this person now, put it on speaker. Minister, my boy, Tunde Lusule is here, he said this. Obasanjo did all of that. So there was a way we could now tell him back. When the toll gates were cancelled under his dispensation, when they were removed, I was traveling in the southeast and I saw vehicles at night running into the toll gates that had not been removed. Accidents there. And I came back and I told him, and I called Ogunlewe, who was the minister there. So, I can give you examples. Wherever we went, there was always an interaction with the locals. Obasanjo also faithfully obliged his presidential media chat once every month, if you remember. It was an opportunity to sit with the media for 2 hours every month and tell Nigerians through them what. And of course, it was also phoning. So irrespective of where you are, you could call.
Well, I know that the jury will still be out on how that era was perceived, but let's quickly go to Lagos now because my colleagues are waiting.
You know, Maupa, you made a very important point. I think the jury is actually watching right now and just trying to connect the dots because it's very interesting how history works, right? You worked with former President Olusegun Obasanjo. His vice then was Atiku Abubakar. And now, how many years after, it looks like the governor that people said was a thorn in the flesh of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, the governor of Lagos at that time, now is the president. I know the former president had spoken about, the perceived rift between them, but, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, and I'd like to just get your thoughts on this, recently at a World Press Conference, spoke about how he stopped or persuaded then President Olusegun Obasanjo from taking over, Lagos and the rest. Is that an accurate account of what really transpired? Was former Governor Bola Tinubu, now President of Nigeria, was he really a thorn in the flesh of former President Olusegun Obasanjo?
Well, we had a president who, in instances, because of his military background, detested being confronted, so to say. And, we also came from the background of zero state wins in the Southwest and the election which brought in Obasanjo. So, I imagine that he conceived his eventual coming on board as an opportunity to expand his scope and actually demonstrate to all of us that he has reach in his own home base, the Southwest. The internal politics of which state was taken and which was not, some of us might not have been privy to. At some level too, they also said that you are supposed to be seen and not to be heard.
Right. Again, I know that this is something that a lot of people will be looking to at least get some insight into, particularly because now we're still sort of reliving the past. But let's speak to this current government now. And you have worked in the presidency, again, for, 8 years? If they were to ask that infamous question, who is the presidency, perhaps you'd be one of the people to raise your hands and say, yes, I'm part of the presidency. People have described former President Olusegun Obasanjo as hands-on. And I think while describing former President Buhari, you said, well, it wasn't quite hands-on, especially with the Ministry of Petroleum that he was the minister of. So far, how would you describe this current president? You said there have been, flips and flops, knee-jerk here and there. Would you describe him as hands-on? Would you describe him as more of an intellectual person, more of a delegating kind of president? What is your own take on the president's style of governance?
I think he's more of a delegating person.
Is that a
Around
good
this time
thing?
last year, even before the election, remember when he went to Chatham House, for his session with them there, and he had his personal aides and friends at the time, and as the questions came, you remember he actually was, pinpointing people who were to speak to the issues. Wali Adun could talk to this. Nasir El-Rufai could speak to that. So, of course, he comes like a delegating president. The issues in Nigeria, as we speak, are tougher. They are more challenging. The general has to also be in the face of fire. That is very important.
Well, since we're taking a walk down memory lane, sir, I'd like you to, with the benefit of hindsight, because you referred earlier to, how you had to intervene in a particular incident where you had to call former Minister of Works, Mr. Adeseye Ogunlewe. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, how do you view the work ethic in ministries, departments, and agencies under this current administration, particularly, as time has worn on, with the growth that's debatable of our democracy, particularly because in recent times, the CBN governor had to refer to how germane the work ethic of ministries would be to the implementation of the current Appropriation Act, referring particularly to that the need for the defeat of that, laissez-faire attitude to work, to the work process in Nigerian ministries. So how do you view the progress or lack of it from the time that you worked in the presidency and now?
Sorry about
So has
that.
there been any transition? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Well, first and foremost, let me observe that the bureaucracy that we have right now at the level of the Federal Executive Council is indeed large. We have 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, which is 37. But as we speak, we probably have about 48 ministers. So we have a more voluminous federal cabinet. This is going to impact on remunerations, on cost of governance, and issues like that. That's at that level. Indeed, you come below, a level of advisors and assistants, so much to say about that. I think previous administrations were a bit more thrifty. We are just 7 months here, so we don't really know what is going to happen moving forward. But Ado Obasanjo, for instance, was very, very thrifty. He didn't accommodate for that kind of voluptuous, multi-level staffing list for administration. We are all crying, we are all bemoaning this, and at the same time, you also find our Lagbo style appearances, on the federal scene, and the national global scene. From New York during the UN Assembly, where we went there and took over, New York. Nigerians were in all the hotels there in Manhattan and all that. And to more recently, the Dubai trip, where Nigerian names overshot the 1,000 mark. The Minister of Information tried to make it light when he said that only about 400 and something people were sponsored by government. That itself was large. Kenya was represented by just about 50, 60 people. I make this point so that we can differentiate between, talking about what it was and what it is. President Obasanjo wanted to see the travel list. He made amendments, those he wanted to drop, those he wanted to add in many instances, so you had that kind of dynamism under his watch. We don't really know where we are going with this, but let's just express the optimism, that things will get better.
That's a really, I don't want to say honest mirror, but that's a good enough mirror to look into and see how things are. But let's quickly touch on security now. The NSA had cause to say recently, give a review about security, and he talked about a reduction in loss of lives and safety on a number of roads. But what really would be, in your opinion, the honest yardstick, a more objective, rather, yardstick to view the administration in terms of security in the last nearly 6 months now?
I guess, things, again, I don't really know whether 6 months is enough time. But if you want to speak, for instance, from the, background of the unfortunate incident of about a week ago, where innocent villagers, over 100 of them, were killed in error in a drone bombing, you probably want to say, wow, we're really getting it right. But the last time I traveled to my state for the off-season, off-cycle governorship election, I made a point that if the kind of security net I saw all through my state, going and coming back, if it was implemented all the time, people like me would probably want to go home more frequently. I don't know how it obtains elsewhere, but we read newspapers by the day, information gets to us, and things are, for me, they are not really getting better. I saw, on the news bar just a while ago, how was it 4 soldiers or 4 policemen were once again shot by unknown gunmen. You know, we shouldn't pass this off at all. It means that we still have, you know, issues to contend with. The administration still has, you know, work to do in its evolution.
Well, that is remains very true. Only recently, just today, we read in the papers that the natives, the people of Igabi local government, Tunubiri village, who were bombed in their numbers, have now sued the federal government for 33 billion naira. That certainly is a steep amount, but certainly, you know, it also points to the responsibility that the state has towards them. How would you advise the federal government to resolve this matter?
Well, maybe I should give credit first to the military. They were upfront. They apologized from the level of the Chief of Defense Staff to the Chief of Army Staff, who has visited. The Vice President has been there. Very sad. None of us will wish for that for people of our communities. At some point, though, there will still have to be dialogue between the aggrieved, you know, and their aggressors. And government also has to rethink its own security strategies so that it just don't go blind bumping people, you know. The affected communities too would have to be compensated, you know, to see how the situation can be mitigated. There were instances where whole families were wiped out. How do we address that? It is for government now to begin to think about that beyond even the suit that has been instituted by the people. But again, government should not insult the people by carrying pillar loads of Indomie there, as if those are the only things that these people need to be placated with. You know, houses have to be built for them in instances. Scholarships have to be awarded. You know, these are the kind of things I think government should be thinking about in addressing that.
All right. One wonders, would they then go back and revisit all those other previous matters, people who were displaced from their homes, who were killed, their places occupied? So several memories, and you just wonder. But I guess we'll wait and see how they proceed with all of this. But always a pleasure to have you on, Dr. Tunde Olusunde, Fellow, Association of Nigerian Authors, and also former Special Assistant to the President between 1999 and 2007.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Let's take a look at some messages here just before we go. This is from Henry. He says, I congratulate the leadership at all levels and the Nigerian people on the initiative signed yesterday. Aside the razzmatazz of ceremony, the big task is walking the talk. The elephant in the room is the subnationals. As at today, many states are not paying their counterpart funding for the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund for actualizing the minimum basic healthcare package for all Nigerians as enshrined in Section 11 of the National Health Act. There is no compelling instrument to enforce the provisions of any law, treaty, or compact. May this be a departure from the past, he says.
We say amen to that. Well, there's another email now, and this is from Dixon Eka, and he says, we do not have a health insurance in Nigeria right now, as the National Health Insurance Scheme has not covered up to 3% of Nigerians. The amount of money intending organizations are made to pay for their staff is just too much, and many people, after intending to register their staff, turn back because of the amount involved. Yeah. President Tinubu should do a comprehensive overhaul of the health insurance for Nigerians to make it affordable for many Nigerians. It says health is wealth.
Well, Sims Health is at the heart of the matter from our mails this morning. This one is from Olagunju Oladele. He says, looking at the Nigerian health system and how the government and private sector seem not to perceive an immediate threat, most people do not fear or value things they can't see, whereas many health conditions lack visible symptoms leading to a sense of detachment. Education and awareness campaigns can help bridge this gap with emphasis on the importance of a world-class health system, because you can't develop or grow an economy from sick people.
And from X, Festus Akimboyewa says the health sector renewal investment initiative may have come too late, as many professionals in our health sector have left to work abroad. But it's better late than never. FG and all stakeholders must first address the burnout and dissatisfaction in our healthcare service. No health system can function well without well-paid and well-motivated professionals.
Well, couldn't put it any better. Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Thank you. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Bye for now.
And do have yourselves a wonderful day ahead. I am Bukola Koka.
I'm Kayode Kikilu. Goodbye.